If you've ever worked a lace project only to have found a mistake somewhere a few rows back, you know how difficult it can be to get back to that row and fix your mistake. Well, by using something called a lifeline, it's going to make that process a whole lot easier. What a lifeline is it's simply a scrap piece of yarn that you thread through all of your live stitches across the row of your work. Now that's going to serve as a placeholder for your stitches as you continue working forward. What that means is as you continue working, it's going to travel down with your work, but because it's a placeholder for your stitches, if you do notice a mistake in your work between your lifeline and the live stitches, you're able to just actually pull your knitting needle and remove it from all of your stitches and pull your working yarn to rip back to the lifeline, and then all of your increases, decreases, everything that was worked across that row from your lace chart, it's just going to be sitting there on your lifeline scrap yarn. With our options knitting needles here, you're actually able to do two things at once. By threading a scrap yarn through the small hole, now this is the hole on the cable end, you would normally use the tightening key here, the little cable key, to attach your needle tip to your cable. By threading the scrap yarn through there, you're actually able to work across your row and it threads the scrap yarn, your lifeline, into your work for you. So you kind of get two things done at once. So I'm just going to grab my yarn. Now for my lifelines, I like to use kind of a contrasting color. That way I'm easily able to keep track of where my lifeline is as I'm working my lace. Now I am using a lace weight yarn. You can also use something like dental floss or any really fine lace weight yarn and just simply thread it through the small opening of your cable, pull it through, and then you're set to go. So now that I have my lifeline threaded through my options needle cable here, I'm just going to work my way across a row of my lace knitting here. And then as you knit across the row, you're actually going to be threading that scrap yarn through all of your stitches at the same time. So there's no need to take a few minutes after you finish your row, find the tapestry needle or sewing needle, thread it through all of your stitches. You don't have to do any of that. You just work everything at the same time. Now, a little note though, when you are working your following row, be sure to only work your working yarn. Just let that scrap yarn, the contrasting yarn, just let it sit there in your stitches. So you're not going to work the scrap yarn. And this really is a tip that helps saves you a lot of time if you do find a mistake a few rows back. Now another thing that I find works well for using lifelines in your lace knitting is to do it in the same row from chart repeat to chart repeat. So I like to just do a lifeline on whenever I get to row 1 of my lace repeat. That way, if I do have to rip back to where my lifeline is, I know what row I'm knitting. You know, if you do it on row 1 once, row 7 once, row 13 once, it gets kind of confusing, and the whole point of a lifeline is to make it as easy as possible. So if you stay consistent between what row you're using it with, it's just going to make it even easier for you. So again, you just pull it through all the way, and then I'm going to take this little part out, and you can see I have my scrap yarn threaded through every single stitch. And that's going to serve as that place marker that we were talking about earlier. And it's going to catch all of your stitches in case you need to rip back. So now that I've worked a few more rows of my lace, you can see that the lifeline has traveled down and it is there catching and holding all my stitches in place. So if I wanted to rip back to where my lifeline was, you simply remove your needle, slide off all your stitches, which can be scary, I know, but your lifeline is there holding all your stitches from a few rows back. You just pull your working yarn to undo those few rows, and then you'll be able to get back to that row that you worked your lifeline in. So you can see here I almost am not able to rip back further than my lifeline. So you can do this pretty fast and it's really easy, and then you can see all the stitches are sitting on that lifeline placeholder waiting to be picked up. So then you just take your needle and simply slide your needle through all the stitches, and it's pretty easy to pick them up too. They're all going to be facing the right way. No stitches are going to be backwards. They're going to be on your lifeline just as they would be when they were on your needle. So you just continue to pick up all of those stitches across your row, and then you're able to fix your mistake. And by working a lifeline with your Knit Picks options needles, you don't even have to take a break or pause to do your lifeline. You just work it in as you're going across your row by threading it through the little tightening hole to tighten your cable to your needle tip. So it makes it really easy, and it's just a good thing to kind of do and double check your work, and just do it, every first row of your repeat, and then you'll be safe in case something happens.